Okay, hey, hi Dad, welcome everyone. For this week's Apes Together Strong podcast, I'm Snappy, or you can call me Chetan. I do web development and have been branching out into podcasting world of the 21st century with some good questions. I hope today we have an anonymous thinker with us. We will call him Ted for this talk, and props to Rad for Radhika for helping us find him because he has an interesting Facebook page, uh, Facebook profile, I guess. So that's it. Let's see what they have to share about philosophy and stuff. Okay, welcome, Ted. Welcome.
Nice to be here.
Hey, Ted. Thanks for joining. We had some interesting conversations in a group regarding some thoughts you had, and we that's why we invited you because there are some questions that have been bothering us, and it might be helpful if you talked about them. Okay, how are you doing today?
Yep, I will try my best to share what I think, and I feel good today. What about you?
Great. It's been a little tough, but let's see how this talk goes, and I hope each and every listener has something which they can learn and take away from this talk. So let's get started with a very basic, easy questions. Uh, okay, so what harsh truths do you prefer to ignore?
What harsh truths I prefer to ignore? So, uh, what level would you be asking this question at? Like, at uh, at the level of daily life, or spirituality, or
Spirituality more, but it's up to you. We're just trying to set a mood here.
I think the biggest question for everybody is like, is there really a purpose to life? So uh, that's what humanity has been trying to answer for thousands of years. That's how we have had so many religions coming up. So they're all about um, like reaffirming that human beings are special in some way, and that we have a certain purpose or destiny to fulfill on Earth, and this purpose is a central part of
Yeah, yes.
every person's life, and they seek to find that.
So these are the truths that you think each human has.
I think this would be one of the most central issues, but there are a lot of other important questions as well.
Yes. So what would be those important questions that uh, one should have, or what are those important questions that you consider as important?
Those questions would be: how do you lead a good life? Is there an objective definition of good and bad? Uh, who should our role models be? And uh, generally, what you can do to make life as fulfilling as possible. I think these are a few very important questions that people tend to have either directly or indirectly at various points of their life. Would you agree with that?
Yes, yes. So, yeah, everyone has those questions about considering what they want to do, how their life has been, what are, what are the experience they have, all those things, right? Everything has some bits of contribution to their psyche,
Yeah.
their decisions, their dreams, the goal they choose, what they consider or benchmark as a good life. So, yeah, I agree.
Right. And sometimes when people are faced with the thought that, or the possibility that several of their preconceived notions or what they had known before was not true, then people do tend to feel very, very disturbed, and people would rather prefer to cling on to something that is uh, as you said, blissful, or hold on to something that is ignorant, instead of embracing something that has a much higher possibility of being true, but that which is uncomfortable to know and experience.
And that sort of that path kind of develops a cocoon, sort of a bubble, or what you may call as a comfort zone, right? What do you think?
Yeah, yeah. And of course, we don't have a great degree of, in fact, I would say that we have very less or no control on the circumstances in which we are born and grow up in. So, at a certain level, we are all uh, trapped in this cocoon for a certain period of time, and then we are, um, at many points in life, presented with different facts and different narratives to pick from. And it is at those points that we choose which path to take. And uh, that is a journey by which someone either chooses to stick to what they had been used to, or embrace a new reality.
Yeah, yeah. That is what people like to call as, I think, as the hero's journey, right? Having embraced with new challenging situations and being in that position where you're not really in power or losing your base.
I would say that everybody is a hero from their own frame of reference, because so if you look at uh, if you look at life as a game, you are in a first person shooter type of game, and you are the player, and you and uh, to a certain degree at least, you seem to have some level of control over your surroundings and your future.
Absolutely. That's a really cool analogy, by the way. Being an FPS player.
Yeah. In fact, I think there's been a very, I can't remember it now, but I think there's been some sort of philosophical paper written on this.
Do you have a link or the name of the writers? We might be interested in looking that out.
So the analogy presented is not exactly that of a first person shooter, but the question is about uh, uh, it's about a bat, right? So the author, his name is Thomas Nagel, I believe. He he asks, uh, can the bat? So it is impossible for a human being, or in fact any other organism, to know what it is like to be the bat, because if you were to uh, transpose your consciousness into the bat, you would still experience what it feels like to be the bat from your perspective. So it is impossible to 100% empathize with somebody else.
So, being someone that you're not The only way you can connect with someone is through empathy. Is that what you're looking at?
I certainly think that empathy is a very useful tool to how and why they're acting in certain ways. But if you ask me if is it the only way to connect with somebody, I'm not sure. But it's certainly a very powerful tool.
Yeah, it is not the only way for sure. There are many ways to engage with someone, one player with the another player, and it sometimes might be just out of free will, right?
Sorry, I didn't hear that.
Yeah, one player might engage with another player with a tool like empathy, or there might be another other tools which they might discover or be experienced with, such as being annoying or just being funny. They can be entertaining. There are different ways, right? Someone can express themselves. So consider, as you said, life being a game. So one player interacting with one another uh, without using any tool, uh, is it possible? Let's ponder on that question a little.
Are you talking about some form of like telepathic communication?
Yeah, like some people talk about the word called empath or being an empath.
I think that some people definitely do have um, a gift of being able to read emotions and feelings. So you must have felt it at some point in your life because somebody close to you might have would not even have spoken a single word to you, but then he or she would come and ask you what's wrong without even knowing what happened or like any form of verbal written
Yeah,
communication.
this does happen. Like sometimes you're thinking about someone and they might just ping you up or you might just get a call. This is real.
Yeah, so I'm not saying that things like ESP certainly exist because there's no way for me to prove that, but I do think that some people have this ability to a greater degree than others.
Yeah, yeah. Some do really are able to, uh, what do you call, connect with someone else in a different way. And yeah, so it is an interesting tool, as you said, being empathy, empath towards someone else. So yeah, it is important when you have goals, when you lead a life where you have something to do. Being able to connect with others in a good way is important.
Right. I believe that it's very necessary to
That is what happens most of the times, and people might be ignorant sometimes, and they might develop different patterns of behaviors out of it, which they might have difficulty dealing with later.
yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah. Okay. So let's talk about another question that I had, which you might. So, what do you think about art or the line between art and the not art?
When you say not the art, what exactly do you mean there?
When I looking at when I'm looking at something, I might consider it something just being normal or bland without colors, and that is what I might mean as not art, which I don't think there are. If uh, so, again, for the existence of not art, there must be something which I consider as art, right?
Yeah, so this is again you can look at this at multiple levels. So you can either think of this as something that pertains to just like uh, the difference between a painting and something that is not a painting, and you can look at this all the way to the level of a philosophy problem. Like you can think of it as something along the lines of the P versus NP problem. So,
Yeah.
would you characterize light as being the absence of darkness, or darkness as being the absence of light? So, I think that the difference between what is art and not art is extremely subjective. But then, uh, for me, for me personally, I would, I would um, not consider everything that is coming out in the name of art these days to be actually art, because a lot of it doesn't yeah, a lot of it doesn't really take any skill or effort to put out. So we see a lot of people just drawing some random lines on paper, or just throwing
Yeah,
just
going
throwing
from
spots of paint.
there, uh, they like looking at a lot of the content which is just freely available on Instagram.
Would you characterize light as being the absence of darkness, or darkness as being the absence of light? So I think that the difference between what is art and not art is extremely subjective. But then, uh, for me, for me personally, I would, I would um, not consider everything that is coming out in the name of art these days to be actually art, because a lot of it doesn't yeah, a lot of it doesn't really take any skill or effort to put out. So we see a lot of people just drawing some random lines on paper, or just throwing
Yeah,
just
going
throwing
from
spots of paint.
there, uh, they like looking at a lot of the content which is just freely available on Instagram. People call themselves artists, or that is the tag they like to be used for them. How do you like grade it? It depends upon the observer, obviously, but sometimes if you are able to value art in a way which is not similar or same as someone else, it might not be art for them, but it might be art for you. So this plays out in a weird manner in auctions and places where art is sold.
So regarding the Insta artist point, I would certainly say that there are a lot of very talented people online. But then it is also necessary to uh, examine the circumstances from which that work of art came, right? So we live in this era of online influencers. The we are we feel extremely pressured to monetize our skills somehow, and get more likes online, get more clout online, and uh, some people even view things like uh, OnlyFans. I'm sure you heard of it, as a form of art, and uh, I think all of this is actually driven by something uh, uh, that is bigger than the art itself. It is actually a means for validation
Exactly.
more than uh, expressing the art itself.
Yeah, each one has been looking for a kind of validation and some sort of sweet dopamine hit for their existence, for their work, for the stuff they have been thinking about, for the stuff they have been working on. And that is what I think. Uh, that is why we have so many creators turning towards art, right?
Right, which is why you also see a lot of very uh, subpar or suboptimal things that are being pushed in the name of art. And while I certainly admit that art and its appreciation is a very the key feature of humanity itself, I think that this culture of you know trying to earn likes and clout online is causing people to uh,
Hmm.
develop a
Yeah.
very warped taste of what is art. People might feel pressured to appreciate what they don't actually like, or the vice versa.
Yes, this process of instant gratification on social media has led to people just believing any kind of stuff that is out there, and that is making like a lot of subpar or what you call sub quality art available. So going from art towards what kind of arts do you think uh, are like what are you interested in nowadays in terms of art, like music, paintings? What comes out to you?
Yeah. So I don't. I wouldn't say that I have a very fixed taste as such. I listen to music from uh, pretty much. For I like to listen to classical music sometimes. Sometimes on rare occasions I even listen to like modern day pop. But um, I think the golden age of music would be from between 1970 and 2000. So
Whoa,
most of the songs that I listen to on a regular basis are from that era.
that's really interesting.
Yeah, and in terms of paintings and all that, I'm still I wouldn't say that I'm a critique or someone who's extremely knowledgeable in the field, but then I do like to go to museums from time to time and um make myself aware of different periods, styles, artists, etc.
So you do consider that art has some other use, like having an inspiration from them, or another purpose that art serves.
I think these days, because we have so many technologies like uh, uh, cameras, smartphones, audio recorders, and all that, I think we fail to appreciate exact like the huge role that artists have played throughout history in capturing the mood of that era. So many things that we could not have imagined from just reading or from other sources become obvious only when you look at paintings from say 500 years ago. So uh, in that way, uh, art serves as this sort of time capsule for us to view the past.
Yeah. If you look at the videos of like music videos or even movies, uh, which are made like 10, 20 years in the black and white era, you can see what people were living like, or what were the type of people, or what were the mindsets in each character. Like movies is a great example for that, I think. Like you can really get deep into what sort of a character that was.
Yeah, I agree with you there.
Any favorite movies you have? Like I think Shawshank Redemption was a great movie like that. Like the way that it captured that era of being jailed for that hour long periods of time.
I've seen a good number of movies from the IMDb top 250 list, and Shawshank is certainly one of my favorite movies. If you ask me about an older movie, I really like movies like Sound of Music.
That's really interesting. Like, I don't, I'll consider, like, I'm not into movies like that. Sound of Music.
Oh yeah. I wouldn't call it niche, but then it's a musical, and musicals can either be really good or they can go really bad. For example, I did not like
La La
the
Land.
French movie. Yeah, I did not like La La Land either at all. So I didn't see that full movie. I shut it off after 5 minutes.
No worries. I was just looking at other movies that were musicals. I am not really into musicals at all. Yeah, but they do have that spark. I understand that. People like when characters really come to life and express in a musical.
Yep, like it's uh, you could say that it almost captures like if you look at the Sound of Music, it captures the feelings from a time that was much simpler and very different from what it is today.
Hmm. Yeah, I understand. I totally get it. Like that is what I was talking about. Like they capture an era, and as you said, art serves as a time capsule for that period. Mm, how about the time when art was really simple, like hieroglyphs, or in the times of cave paintings?
I think art from those eras is even more important because we have very few primary sources to work with and and discover how life was during those times. Um, yeah, so in general, like if you look at historical sources, the fewer sources you have, the intrinsic value of each one goes higher and higher.
Yeah, that is what I totally think of. Like when you have like the least amount of resources, you're like the most intelligent person. Like you are super careful about each thing, absolutely paranoid about your last cookie that you ate. um, it's really fascinating to look at the lives of people who didn't have much resources.
Yeah, so if you look at and the craziest thing is that it's not even limited to the past. So uh, uh, last year when the corona pandemic was first announced, you saw so many people running to the stores and buying things like toilet paper because they were afraid that they would be
Yeah, everyone remembers that.
yeah. uh, and it was just so funny to me because like people were buying up uh, mountains of toilet paper and uh, like did they not figure out that and a lot of other more important items remained less sold. So it just goes to show that people put pooping as an activity to be much more important than something else.
Yeah, even in a situation where you have been absolutely like challenged, like the pandemic, people decided that having a comfort of being able to wipe was their priority.
Yeah, so it's at times of panic like these that you can uh, get a much clearer picture of how exactly people think and what their priorities are.
Yeah, exactly. But this is what our modern society has kind of trained us to look at. Modern, so organizations have put us in these patterns of thought, these patterns of what do you call, just being addicted to these the system of comfort, where even stepping out, like you wonder if you are going to find a network on your phone when you're stepping out, because it's an important part of your life now. You won't go somewhere where you don't have a cell network.
Yeah, it is true. Like our dependence on the system continues to grow every day, and especially after the introduction of techno of things like biometric IDs, the universal ID Aadhaar system. So as of today, uh, I think no matter where you are in the world, uh, you are being tracked, you are being followed, your activities are being noted, your online activities especially. But even when you step out, there are so many security cameras, so many CCTVs operational, that it is becoming truly difficult to go off the grid.
Yeah, that's a very popular statistic that really goes around.
I'll add
Like,
something here. I heard, Edward Snowden, his podcast with Joe Rogan. Uh, he very easily and very, he stated how everyone's like how government started surveillance and recording everyone, and how the cell towers are used to record your location and everything. Like you can never go off the grid. You are always on the grid, no matter what you do.
Yes, I think the arrest and the uh, persecution of people like Edward Snowden and Julian Assange uh, by the Western authorities should be sending us some pretty big red signals, because, uh, in my opinion, these people are absolute heroes, because they went ahead, put their own lives at risk, and showed the general public like how much they were being snooped on, how much their data was being like used for bad purposes, and it got so bad that both of these guys had to uh, resort to hiding away abroad, and they can't return to the US even today.
yeah, that's a really kind of sad state of personal
Yes. So,
liberty. But
Snowden said he'll return to US if he is promised a fair trial, but the government is not promising him. Like he's not getting the response from the government that he wants. That is why he's like hiding somewhere in Russia. He'll return to US if he's guaranteed a free trial.
I think at some level he knows that that is never going to happen, because uh, internally, or uh, at some level, people know that, you know events like 9/11 were actually not done by some rogue Middle Eastern terrorists, but actually orchestrated. So, uh, given that people of such people capable of such levels of evil are present everywhere, uh, even if he's given a public assurance, there is every chance that something bad might happen to him once he returns.
Yeah,
exactly,
so
and
after
that's
during 9/11, he was working at like I think CIA or something. He was working for the intelligence. So when the attack happened, so he told that everyone like in the office were told to leave and go home, but they wanted to stay there and they wanted to do the surveillance and find out like who was behind this and everything. But the government just said that no, security like these intelligence agents, the government told them to go home, leave the premises and go home. And then later the president used, I think what he said is some power that president had. to start this surveillance program without even telling the Congress or taking the vote from Congress.
Yeah, so I think you're talking about the Patriot Act, right? So, so if you look at history, events like these have always been used to bring about some drastic change in society. So if you go back to Nazi Germany in uh, in 1933, there was this big Reichstag fire, right? In in which the uh, German Parliament building was totally destroyed by fire. So Hitler, he blamed the communists, but then uh, the the truth is that it was an inside job. And after this incident, the Enabling Act was passed, which gave the government a lot of uh, very wide-ranging powers. And in the aftermath of 9/11, we had the Patriot Act, which gave the government a lot of power, which increased their snooping activities, and people couldn't even complain because they were being told that all this was being that all this was being done for their security.
Yeah, and this also gives us the question like, what level of security does one need, and what type of information or what do you call as encroachment of the modern society are you able to, uh, what do you call, as survive to?
I think many thinkers uh, have characterized our present situation in this way that we think that we are free, but we are actually just uh, free range humans, like free range cattle
Yeah, yeah,
on a large farm. Because like cattle, we have all been given numbers and IDs. We are always tracked. There are fences to keep us in our place. There are sheepdogs. There are
but at the same time the cost of being able to track all that has been
sure the
extremely
rate of
high.
line. So in some, there are so many ridiculous laws that. Sorry, go on.
Yeah, I was saying like at the same time we have this kind of an overhead or a cost of being able to track everyone, being able to keep the databases up, the data centers up, because there was an interesting statistic that I was talking about earlier that since the invention of radio and I think 2017 or 18, the amount of information that has been produced since 2018 to 21, like in the last past 3 years, has been equal to that what do you call as data. So that much information and data we have been collecting at an enormous pace, and that is what again has been making us pay while we are free ranging, or what do you call as becoming the cattle for that data.
So these days we don't have just data. We have data about data. We have data about data about data, and there are probably two more levels to that. So this called and uh, it is pretty safe to say that from the moment we step online, yeah, regardless of what level of protection that the ordinary person takes. So whether that is using VPN, using Tor, or using a combination of these, it's even if those are secure for now, I think they will not be secure for too long.
Yeah. This is another thing which security experts talk about as you just have to be, less, a little more secure than your peers. Then that's all. That will what will keep you safe.
Yeah. So the question is, how much longer will this protection last, and has it been breached already? So I think if it has been breached, we won't even know because people like Facebook and WhatsApp tell us that uh, all calls are encrypted and everything, but then you have so much of people's uh, uh, personal data and everything being sold to third parties.
Yeah. Even Zuckerberg uses Signal.
Yes.
Yeah, that tells a lot about your systems. So, going back to the organizations being encroached on every part of your life, uh, or do you think free will plays a role in this, or does that exist at all?
So, if you look at the question of free will, I think all religions do account for free will in some way. So, if you look at Christianity, for example, it does say that you know that human beings are free to a certain degree, and uh, so even though it uh, actually gives a very clear starting point and end point for humanity, that is, from the time of uh, the creation of humanity, from the Adam and Eve incident all the way to now, and the upcoming uh, return of Christ. So, in between these two major points, there is still a lot of scope for individual free will and action. And if you look at Eastern philosophies, like say uh, Buddhism or Hinduism, there is a lot of emphasis on dharma and karma. So, uh, as you sow, so shall you reap.
Yeah.
So, uh, I would say that if you look from a scientific point of view, however, uh, for a long time it was thought that free will was impossible because of the law of causality, right? So, from the time
Yeah.
of the Big Bang, when you had the first uh, particles, uh, exploding from that singularity, uh, it was said that the chain of causality would stretch all the way to the future, and that there is no way for any sort of uh, divergent paths to creep in. But since the last 80, 90 years or so, we have learned a lot about quantum physics and how fuzzy or how uncertain it is.
Random.
So you have principles like the Heisenberg's uncertainty principle,
Yes.
uh, and we still thought like there was a lot of debate on whether uh, the light was a particle or a form of energy.
Yeah, it
Uh,
bothered many physicists.
yeah, certainly, and we still uh, haven't really discovered like a standard model of physics yet. I think just 2 days ago there was talk of some new particle being added to the standard model, and physicists still haven't found a way to integrate uh, the Einsteinian relativity along with quantum physics. So there is
Yeah.
still a lot of room to account for.
Yeah, from scriptures to the current cutting edge technology, there have been tremendous efforts to look at the reality or the universe in general. But does that mean that there is no free will?
I think free will certainly. So if uh, if someone were to say that everything was predetermined, but however, at the individual level, people felt that they were free, Is there a difference? So I meant to say that, for example, if somebody could not tell the difference between if they were actually free or if they were under the illusion of being free, then from that individual's perspective, wouldn't both the wouldn't both those things be the same?
Yeah, yeah. For an outside observer, that might just tell you that, yeah, they are probably talking out of
Yeah.
free
So
will.
yeah. So I think we're sort of stuck at that point in the debate. So uh, we don't know if there is objective free will, but people certainly seem to think that there is some level of subjective free will, and I believe that
Mhm.
uh, from an individual's point of view, if you aren't able to distinguish objective and subjective free will, then for that person, this whole debate becomes meaningless.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and there was this what do we call as a model for distinguishing artificial intelligence, which was developed by Alan Turing during the Second World War, I think. Artificial intelligence, right?
Yeah,
Uh, do you think that uh, was a good model, or people can it be used for, like, in our case, to test if?
earlier I used to think that like the computer could tell when you selected certain images, but then later on I read somewhere that it is not the images that are important, but the computer is actually tracking your mouse movement.
Yeah,
So
yes,
if
yes.
it were a computer, it would have done so in a very like straight or uh, mechanical kind of way. But since human beings have shaky hands and all that, the movement of the mouse path itself would be more random. And and since computers are getting better at uh, imitating humans on a daily basis, I think we could soon see this technology becoming redundant.
Yeah, yeah. That I think this model for developing or kind of distinguishing between real and bot was developed in some game engine or something. I don't know really. I think I read somewhere.
I'm not sure of this particular fact either.
Okay, okay, no problem. Uh, are you big into games, by the way? Do you like games? Video games?
Um, I don't play too many games now, but back when I was in school, I did have a PS3 and I played a few games. I I'd never been too much into sports games, although I played FIFA for a few months. But then after that, I've rarely played sports games. But I either used to play games like Uncharted or Far Cry.
Ah, open world games.
Yeah, more or less, and of course GTA.
Yeah, GTA has been like kind of notorious for each kind of gamer enjoys it in some way.
Yes, I like driving in it to, you know, just calm down.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's just really emulation of what you do in real life, but it just takes off all that pressure and stress of, being in danger, being in nature.
I, in fact, a few months ago, I downloaded Cyberpunk, and I was pretty disappointed by the whole game because, uh, for some reason, yeah, first of all, it did have many bugs in it, and it was not.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Like how the game community received it, it's like the developers did a really bad job.
Yeah, considering that this game has been in development for so many years, uh, I think they could have done a better job. But then, uh, uh, I did not love that game in the way that I love GTA 5 or other GTA games, because there seemed to be something missing, which I can't put a finger on right now. Um, yeah, so I don't play too many more games these days.
Yeah, that was another thing which kind of being growing up you used to do. Like you can spend 2 3 hours and nothing would matter. But nowadays, if you are in a game for more than 2 hours, it feels sick.
Yes, I do think that, like, as you grow older, you have more responsibilities, and you feel uh, like you feel a bit guilty when you spend too much time doing the stuff.
Yes, yeah, yeah. And as your priorities change, you kind of grow old. But uh, the thing about playing games, it challenges your basic your human decision making, and that is where I think games or having any sort of play really matters.
Yeah. So what I find especially intriguing is that, I'm sure you heard of this term NPC, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So
Non-playable,
I just
this
find
one, non-playable, right? Non-playable characters.
a non-playable characters. So I just find it really intriguing how that concept made its way out of the game world into our political discourse, and how well it actually fits, because we do have a lot of political NPCs in society these days.
Can you please elaborate? I'm not able to understand. Like, what do you mean by political NPC?
So political NPCs could be thought of as people who are, like, say, blind supporters of a certain party or certain leader. So uh, through social media and other things, these people have been fed a certain number of uh, like fixed talking points, and and a fixed number of replies to give when confronted by somebody from an opposite political party. So you have a fair number of say false
Oh,
dichotomies
I
existing.
understand that. I really understand that really well. uh, Nietzsche called them as die hard, right? In German, what was it? Die hard. Yeah, the herd mentality. It also compounds that.
Yeah, yeah. I'm not sure about the exact term he used. I just know about his master and slave mentality, though. Uh, so within a game, when you approach a certain character, you get a list of options, right? So if you press the triangle, you can say something. You can ask something, and the character responds. If you press an X and say something, he responds in another way. So if you press something else outside of the list of these options, the character cannot respond, right? So when somebody who does not fit into these uh, predefined political boxes comes and confronts this political NPC, he or she does not know what to do, because throughout his life, he or she has been conditioned to react in a way to certain people.
Yes, yeah. And I'm sure everyone listening might have come across some of them on the internet somewhere, somehow.
Yeah. So if you look at, for example, India, uh, if you uh, oppose Rahul Gandhi, you are necessarily a fan of Modi. But if you oppose Modi, you're a fan of Rahul Gandhi. in America, the situation is even worse. So like you have if you oppose Trump, you're automatically Biden. If you're pro Biden, you're automatically Trump. So there's no room for independent thought or nuance or
Yeah, yeah,
identifying with a third, a fourth, or a fifth option. So at a deeper level, uh, it's actually imperative to consider whether uh, these forms of governance is actually a form of controlled opposition, right? So
yeah, yeah, yeah,
the way it's been set up, it is like a zero-sum game. You have two big political parties. Somebody wins, somebody has to lose, but there is no room for any newcomers or anti-system people into the center stage.
yeah, yeah. And even having any conversation or any competition, you have been fed since your childhood that there must exist a duality, like winner and a loser. There's nothing in between.
Yes, and I think like this is one of the attitudes that is the hardest to change, especially when somebody grows older. That there are quite a few shades of gray. I'm not saying
Yeah.
all of those shades. Sorry, go on.
Yeah, like every kind of election or any kind of competition produces all kinds of characters and outcomes, but you only have this fixed outlook that there's a winner and there's a loser and nothing in between.
Yes, the problem is that this attitude doesn't just it doesn't stay just at the top, right? It goes through every single person of the society, and people feel that they are uh, a part of uh, or a mouthpiece for a certain party. So when you get roped into very large organizations and factions like these, you might find that you are forced to defend or oppose certain points that you actually support or oppose. So
Or you might be living by them all your life.
yeah, so you get a lot of uh, what I call ideological baggage that you must deal with.
Yeah, 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 exactly. That's a good term.
Oh, thank you.
So everyone has this ideological baggage, and they have, they have to in some way confront with it.
They can either choose to confront it, or they can straight away reject it by saying that this is not what they this is not what I identify with, and that I've been falsely roped into the system.
Yeah, yeah. But that's again means that they have to be nuanced, and people don't really like or enjoy doing that.
It is I would say that having this kind of nuance is actually a bit of a privilege, because a lot of people simply are not in a position to think about several issues in this way, because for them,
Yeah, that is another thing.
so it sort of becomes the moral obligation for people who are in the know to bring this form of thought to as many people as they can, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So
It
for
comes
example,
across.
if a certain scientist were to find out the the cure for cancer, say, now he could uh, technically he might not be under any obligation to share it or whatever, but then there is a moral duty for him to uh, sort of ensure that his finding uh, benefits the greatest number of people possible.
Yeah, how fascinating. Like humans have to have some morals, but animals, they never have to wonder about it.
Yeah, it's crazy because y- you know a lot of people. So uh, whenever you hear some kinds of political debates, you often hear of human beings being the same as animals in some ways, but not in others. And to me, that is a very uh, interesting dichotomy. So if you take, for example, the uh, vegan versus non-vegan debate, you see a lot of people saying that, uh, look, animal uh, in the animal kingdom, obviously, there are no morals of any sort. Uh, Animals kill each other all the time and eat them, so technically, it should be okay for us as well.
Yeah, why not?
But then the person who uses this excuse does not realize that the animal uh, that within the animal kingdom you have behaviors like rape, incest, uh, murder, etc., which is not condemned, and which they do condemn in the human society. So there's a fine line between using these sort of equivalences in the modern political debates.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Hmm. You really put up really good argument there. But think about animals not having morals. Uh, Humans really have to think about what they put in their mouths. And sometimes the type of food that you consume puts you in a bracket in the society, and people have various thoughts about it. Like if you have no spices or the garlic in your diet or your meals, you are easily considered as a someone who eats a Brahmin diet, right? It changes their perspective about you just by the food choices.
Yeah, that is certainly true. Uh, some people. So uh, I think it's also useful to ask another kind of question, uh, whether they were uh, actually born into this type of food system, or have they adopted this food system after reading the for and against arguments for it.
Yeah, like if they developed it under a moral structure, then it is valid to have, right? But if they just started doing it without any reason, then why are they even doing it?
Yeah, true, correct, yes.
And that's really interesting. But if you go back to uh, a time where you didn't have much food and you had to depend on whatever meal you were able to put your hands on, it was a strange time.
Yeah, that was a completely different era, and I do believe that you know uh, this example comes up several times that uh, if a vegan were to be stuck uh, on some deserted island, and his only chance of survival is by consuming some uh, animal there, would he do it, and is it moral? So I would say that of course it's moral, like uh, because the preservation of your own self is probably one of the most strongest instincts out there, and uh, you know in a do or die situation, it's absolutely it's like there's no problem doing it.
Yeah. So, in an absolute threat of survival or being able to just get by, you might have an option where you can consume some animal, and that might be fine. But if you are able to have a reason to choose a better food, then why not? That's a really good argument for vegans out there. And yeah, but going back to the having morals question, does what type of morals, like people with power or people with religion, have? Do you think that they are less or equally corrupt morals?
I think people at the very top of the pyramid, I don't think that they see the rest of humanity. Like I don't think they see the rest of people as being actual people, but you know, more like uh, disposable worker bees of some sort. Um, and
Hmm.
and they always use people in certain ways to fulfill an agenda, and sometimes it might appear as though these people you care for the society, but they don't.
Yeah, yeah. So, do you think having absolute authority or something might be always turn out disaster for the society? What are your thoughts on the having a regime like the Chinese ones have?
Arguments for having a strong regime is that of efficiency, and in some cases, I would say they're right because if you look at China and if you look at India, so you have two uh, seemingly different political systems, uh, and they have managed to uh, outpace us in pretty much every department, and that too by a large margin. Uh, Chinese infrastructure is like 100 times better than the Indian ones these days. So there are certain benefits of authority, but then it's also important to look at who is in authority and what their uh, you know ultimate or bigger goal is, right? It is very necessary to view history as being a sort of uh, like a sort of building process towards something,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
if you do that you might be able to discover that a lot of historical events are actually linked and are the building blocks for something that's going to happen in the future. And these events are very intentional and very well planned, but they somehow are made to appear random.
hmm, yeah. So it is important to have a system, but sometimes this civilization uh, takes away from a lot of people who were doing just fine without this system.
Right. For example, if you look at the uh, current COVID hoax, so you see a lot of arbitrary rules and regulations being imposed on people in the name uh, you know uh, of caring for your uh, fellow man, right? And outwardly, all of it seems to make sense because uh, 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 given the constant media coverage over the last year about how deadly this um virus is, and how these regulations are the only way to beat it, for the average person, it might seem as though this is the only way to get back to normal. But then it is when you so when you take a closer look at the various events that have been going on, it is pretty apparent that uh, that getting back to 2019 levels is obviously not the key aim of many of these administrations and many of these corporations. So it is necessary to ask questions and be wary.
Yeah, yeah. But going ahead, we have to have businesses open. We have to kind of evade these regulations in some ways just to get by. And this workhorse of civilization at the same time is also, like I was saying, if you look at the case of Adivasis or the people who are living in the forests or deserted lands all their life, they have an incentive to join the civilization, but they also have a challenge to be able to make survival in this new system they have to subscribe to now.
Yeah, it's a pretty difficult choice, and at sometimes they don't even have a choice because their lands are taken up by various players and for different projects, and they're forced to migrate to more suburban or urban areas. So uh, for somebody who lives in the city, it might feel as though this sort of jungle life is bad in every way possible. But then, uh, yes, you do have fewer comforts. Like you don't have air conditioning, you don't have Netflix and all that. But you're also free from a lot of stress that living in civilization puts you in. So, for example, these Adivasi people don't have to worry about paying taxes or adhering to various regulations or uh, uh, stopping 5G radiation from being uh, you know uh, projected at their bodies or preventing poisonous vaccinations from being uh, you know administered to them. So they have a different set of challenges, but they also have a very distinct set of benefits.
Yeah, and sometimes if you have to kind of uh, lead your life, you need to end up having this decision taken properly or in the given time, that is, because if you're not taking that decision, someone else which has more power and more force, brute force than you, can take that for you, and that might make everything difficult and unbearable.
Yeah. So as we're seeing these days, uh, a lot of decisions that should have been ours to take are being taken by uh, higher entities, right,
Yeah.
within both the government and the private sector. So I want to ask some people who are listening to this podcast. So what do you think about topics like uh, GMO food crops, 5G, and all that?
Uh, so I think I have some understanding about both of them. uh, so having a crop which is going to be much healthier and going to produce better should be allowed. And even if you look at 5G, I don't think that band can produce any harm to anyone. But going ahead, it might be a problem if you keep, aggregating all those antennas around you all the time, 24/7. So it also has pros and cons. But yeah, it is an interesting question. I hope our listeners will reply to us in the comments or on Twitterverse, anywhere you are listening to this.
Yeah, so I think that outwardly 5G does have a lot of benefits. Like, you know, of course, who doesn't want high-speed internet, right? But then, given that it so perfectly coincides with such a major shift in society, like uh, just today, I read that the U.S. Pentagon has succeeded in developing this microchip to be inserted into people for storing data and stuff. I just think that uh, in the near future, we will all be part of this sort of massive um, human machine cyborg combination, right? In which this these nanorobots within our body will be controlled by this high speed internet waves, right? And anybody who is not uh, going by what the authorities want will be uh, uh, punished instantly by having these robots either release some sort of chemical internally or in some other manner. Uh, and we are going to develop this like social credit system, like what is seen in China these days, but at a much higher level.
Yeah, yeah. The challenges in the future will always be something which I think we will never be able to predict exactly.
That chip you just said that the Pentagon got, Elon Musk is Elon Musk is also making a chip similar like that, Neuralink.
Yeah, it's not really a chip, it's a system completely.
Yeah, it's a system. He inserted
Yeah,
into a monkey, and that monkey was playing video game or something.
Yeah, and if you uh, some of my Christian friends have told me this that in the Bible there is uh, a book of Revelation which talks very specifically about the things that are happening these days. Like, of course, it does not mention microchips and 5G and all that by name, but it does give a rough outline of the things that we are seeing today. So, uh, so I'm sure you have all heard of this vaccine passport controversy, right? Have you heard of it?
no, what are you talking about?
So, uh, in India, also, like, uh, leaders have begun talking about it. So, just 2 days ago, the Indian Medical Association wrote to the Prime Minister uh, asking for vaccination certificates to be like this sort of license for people to come back into society and resume their normal activities. So, uh, and in some other countries around the world, it's called a vaccine passport. Uh, so these documents will basically track whether uh, who has and who has not got the COVID vaccine, and on the basis of that, they will be allowed
Oh,
to
So it's Arogya Setu, but for the vaccines.
sorry.
It's Arogya Setu, but for the vaccine.
Yeah, sort of, yes.
Yeah, I've heard of it. Yeah, heard of the passport thing worldwide. Like you have to carry the certificate that you have been vaccinated if you want to travel or do something.
Yeah, so if you look at it in this way, that this whole pandemic has been about stealing our freedoms and selling them back to us at a very high price, right? So, like, uh, in 2019, we did not need to carry any vaccine certificate to enter a movie theater or to buy food or travel to most countries, right? Like except for a few countries in Africa which have yellow fever. Apart from that, in 195 to 200 other countries, you had no restrictions to travel. But now they are asking for access into your body to be to sell you back your basic freedoms of movement and to live in society.
Okay, so I'll ask you one thing. How much do you think this pandemic was planned? Before you answer, I'll tell you one thing. I read this in a Business Insider post. You know, when this pandemic started, not started, but in the middle of the pandemic, I read it that during January 2019, even before the pandemic, even the virus went like a pandemic status. It was in locally in China only, I think, till that time. It wasn't blowing up. So the China used to make N95 and export to all other European and American countries. But in January 2019, China started buying back the N95s, and this caused a shortage. Later the year, this caused a shortage for N95 for all medical personnel and all over the world. So, how much do you think that the whole pandemic was planned, or was it not planned?
So this N95 detail was actually news to me because I did not know it so far. But uh, what I base uh, my opinion on is that just in October 2019, uh, just around the time that the first cases were recorded in China, there was an event in New York City uh, in which Bill Gates was present, along with a few members from the WHO and other major organizations. And there was this pandemic simulation exercise for a global pandemic, right? The timing of that happens to be extremely suspect. And not just that, uh, Bill Gates has been talking about reducing the population of the Earth several times. In fact, there is he has contributed massively to various vaccine campaigns around the world, and a lot of deaths from his campaigns have been covered up as well. And uh, to people listening to this podcast, I would like to ask you to check out what the Georgia Guidestones are. Right, so these are a set of uh, pillars or rocks that contain 10 commandments of the new world. Right, and it talks about reducing the world population from the current 7 billion to just 500 million. So this means that roughly 15 out of 16 people present today will be killed. Hello.
Yeah, yeah, can hear you now.
Sorry, I
Your voice
forgot the
went
last
for a
question.
minute. You were talking about the Inferno.
Yeah, so I think that a lot of these institutions that people trust in are complicit in bringing about this whole event. Uh, the pandemic simulation event which I talked about was called uh, Event 201. If you want to check it out online. Uh, so yes, so people tend to point at organizations like the WHO and the IMA, the FDA, etc. when it comes to uh, like uh, credibility and good intention. But the truth is that uh, these organizations might not be existing for public welfare at all, right?
Right, right.
So uh, just because something is given the title official, that doesn't necessarily make it good. And it is necessary to remember that the people working in these organizations are just as likely to be corrupt as anybody else. And the problem is that their corruption is going to lead to a large number of casualties and damage to society.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so as I was saying, it is necessary to develop a certain amount of skepticism towards uh, intentions of these very powerful actors.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And another thing which you can want to try as someone who is constantly, doubting others and doesn't want to believe in an organization to take care of himself is to adopt a new way of life and just go back to being the monkey.
Yes, I understand that this has become something of a meme. But when, uh, for me at least, when people talk about going back to monkey, doesn't necessarily doesn't mean that you should strip naked and go into the forest, right? Like it's a
No,
process
no.
by which you gradually dissociate from this matrix.
Yeah, dissociate from the system.
So things like having your own water supply without uh, all these toxic fluorides and chemicals that the that various organizations pump into it. Uh, Being able to be self-reliant in terms of energy and food through solar and wind turbines. Uh,
Yeah, yeah. Even that works.
yeah, and trying to you know I understand that for a lot of people, growing their own food might not be an option, but you can always move to a more rural area in which like people have large uh, you know uh, cooperative farms so that you
Yeah,
can
yeah.
be.
It's a thing.
So this is not a new concept by any means. So like this has been the like this was a human way of life 1,000 years ago, and you still see people who reject modern society to be part of such communes.
Yeah, yeah. It's about also being able to have an organization, but uh, not being completely reliant on them and reducing your footprint so as to not make the system unstable. That is also a good idea.
US has, I think, the Amish. I think they are called Amish community. They
Yes, yes,
they
the
live
Amish
off the
community.
grid. They live off the grid, self-sustained community.
Yeah, so the see they're actually a pretty good example of what it means uh, to actually go back to a more uh, free way of living, because uh, they are not like uh, the meme that you see online, right? Of
No,
of
no, yeah.
so they're civilized, of course. They uh, and they don't even live in a very rural area. They actually live near a highway or something.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
uh, they live in this more or less self-sustaining commune in which they have their own values and systems, and they are very less reliant on outside services and products.
Yeah, so if you have to embrace that way of life, you kind of have to bring yourself towards a balance from being right at the level where you might be able to have some emergency service at a call, but you should be able to, you know, have your own sunrise, have your own sunsets without anyone disturbing your view.
Yeah, so I think they have found a pretty good balance between going to the completely deep end, but they are also sufficiently removed from mainstream life. So I think it's a pretty good place to be in.
Yes, and I hope that someday you might be able to find a place like that. For all our apes listening to this, I guess it's been a really good, more than an hour of talk, I think. It's time to wrap it up. Any final thoughts you have for us, Ted?
It has been really great being with you all and sharing some thoughts. So, if I were to say something as a parting thought, it would probably be this: uh, do not let preconceived notions stop you. Keep doing your research. Uh, Sometimes your gut feeling is right. The gut feeling is not totally random. Uh, it is a survival instinct. So if you feel something is wrong, make sure you do your research and never trust uh, anyone blindly. That would be it.
Great, great. That has been Ted, a new friend at this server. You're welcome to have any questions for him later in the Discord. This has been Chetan, and this was Apes Together Strong podcast for everyone listening for the recorded version. Thank you for listening.
For listening. Thank you,
Thank you.
Ted. It was nice having you here. I hope we can have you again. Or
Okay, Puneet. Yeah, I think we're done with
yeah,
today's
I'll stop.
recording.
Yeah, I'll stop recording.